Welcome to you, Korey Rowe. Thank you so much for being here on this beautiful day that we're having in New York City. It's only 103 degrees, so everybody's just relaxed and everyone's in a great mood.
Yes, I mean, I think it depends on how you poll the people. At 103 degrees, there's a lot of opinions on that. I'm from the island, I'm from Jamaica, so I'm well acclimated to the heat, so I'm having a good time.
Fair enough. How long have you been in New York?
I think I'm officially a New Yorker, as they say. This is my 10th year. I've been traveling here before, but I set roots, started living in 2015, so at that decade mark.
Yep, okay, you're official then. I grew up here, so I'm very happy to dole out a few
You're a
extra years.
unicorn.
I am. I'm a unicorn. I'm still here. I'm still somewhat sane, maybe debatable. Into this conversation, I know that you and I have some overlap when it comes to our philosophies on microdosing wellness and common sense wellness and all of those
Mhm.
approaches. So, first, before we jump in, I would love for you to just share a bit of your story and how you got to where you are. You're a fitness expert for a long time, you're the founder of the KR method. You have, I think, recently part- partnered up with Centr, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want to hear it from you, how you got to where you are.
I got here by seeing something different and deciding that it was worth pursuing. And growing up in Jamaica, there wasn't a lot of persons practicing high levels of wellness where I was from acutely. It wasn't as engineered as it is somewhere in the bigger cities like New York or California. And I saw my brother, who was very athletic growing up, captain of his basketball team. And I saw him going to the gym. And he was my sort of North Star. He was the person I looked up to. He was my hero. And like anyone else who has a hero, you want to follow in their footsteps. So at 17 years old, I made a case to my mom that I wanted to join the gym just like my big brother. And at that time, it was important because I always felt a bit inadequate. Felt like I was a kid who got picked last or not at all for his sports team. And I felt like I was somewhat of a stranger in my body. I didn't feel as connected. And I knew that there must be something I could do. I saw how my brother was, and the gym felt like an obvious path to that. And what I assumed and expected, the gym delivered on that. I felt more confident. I was stronger. I started to notice this change. And what was very impressive for me, it was the relationship between input and output. Yeah, I would put in the work and I would see it show up in a very tangible, obvious way in terms of what I could do, what I could lift, and the physical and mental transformation. And I was hooked because I was searching for something like that, I would say, for the last 10 years. Because ever since I was seven, I've started, it was a weird that other kids were faster, stronger, bigger. And it led me down a path. I was just very obsessed about how far I could take this, studied, experimented on myself, learned from those around me. And that led into a formal career as a fitness professional. It really blossomed when I went to college. It was my side gig. It was how I earned while being in college. I did personal training at my university. And I was now a little bit more capable physically. I started to make my teams, soccer, sprinting, cricket, track and field. And it's a snowball. Going into the gym was that gateway. So it led to this sort of side hustle, side job, a way for me to earn in college and also to participate in sport. And fast forward many years later, when I came to the US, I started working at a big box gym. And that was like my first experience of sharing what was so impactful for me, the transformation I experienced with other people, because then I could put together my blueprints from my training, from my studies, and we could action it with a client. And I would see that same sort of transformation, almost like a mirror effect of what I experienced with their journey. They got stronger, they felt more confident, and they felt more at home in the one place they can't evacuate, which is their bodies. And that was like a new foreign love. I think it moved from somewhat of a self-centered sort of pursuit of how better I could become to somewhat of a purpose and a mission for how can I share what I've stumbled upon. And that evolved. My career blossomed in the fitness space. I moved on from that big box gym and I moved to a more boutique, niche, high-end, specialized form of training, some in Soho, Tribeca. And I was there for 7 years. Gym was called Dog Pound, and I did every job there. Eventually, my last job was director of operations, so I was somewhat overseeing the operations of the gym, helping with trainer development. And that led me into this like management leadership role within the fitness industry, flat my experience as a practitioner and as a personal trainer. And they both matured and blossomed. And that's where the idea said for me to develop the care method came. So I took all my experience of training thousands of clients in person, online, helping other trainers develop their approach, that human-centered personal approach, along with strong science-backed theories and action blueprints, and my leadership skills that I developed from managing teams, and brought all of that to this care method. And it was my opportunity to build something bigger than I could under another umbrella, like a corporate setting. So that gave birth to the care method. And the partnership with Centr that you've slightly mentioned was another expression, right? Centr is a powerful brand. They are very much about democratizing fitness, making it accessible for individuals, and really focusing on sound science-backed principles in a no-nonsense, very accessible way. So it made perfect sense from a value standpoint, strategic standpoint for us to align and to launch the Strength in Motion program, which is a 6-week program, 5-day split focusing on strength, mobility, and performance. And that has been just tremendous. The feedback on that has been overwhelmingly positive. So I'm very grateful I had the opportunity to do that.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's very exciting that you've been able to build really truly incrementally to the place where you are now, which is very impressive. And touched on a few things there that I'd like to go back into in a moment, but can you give me what the overall framework of what the Strength in Motion program is? Like, what are the kind of the main tenets of that?
The main tenets of that, in terms of a North Star outcome that we set for persons looking to join, are to improve their strength, their mobility, and their performance. Those are buzzwords. The plan behind it are sound to deliver on that. It is intermediate to advanced program. There are some inroads for beginners because of the sensitivity of the earlier phases of the program, to really welcome persons almost at all levels to do it. It's a 5-day training split. So we train for 5 days. Those 5 days have a recovery day, mobility day. It has a high intensity and strength days for the other days. We take a full body approach to be efficient on time. And it is minimal equipment, so it's very friendly for those persons who are at home or who have minimal equipment. That being said, it delivers on the theories of progressive overload and the sort of intensity that you would need if you had more complex tools. We just didn't want it to be somewhat of a barrier to entry by making it too complex with the tools that we use. And to flank the program, you get the Centr ecosystem of guided nutrition, recovery practices, and the host of all of the add-ons that are within the Centr universe. So the program is really supercharged by all that Centr offers. And we have new features that Centr recently released for the program, which is like coach guided sessions. So I walk individual through every rep, every set, every day through audio coaching. So really get my mindset on why we're doing what we're doing, how we should do it, as opposed to just having reps and sets on a paper or being displayed. I really aim to download my 10 years plus of experience within that 6-week program. So persons can think like I do, move like I do, and enjoy the benefits that so many of my clients have over the years.
I'm hearing everything that you are saying as somebody who's pretty well versed in the vocabulary of fitness and movement and just general well-being. I know that it's important to you, as well as you mentioned, to Centr, to really create that sense of democratization and accessibility. And that's something that obviously I lead with, is that I feel like wellness in whatever capacity, there should be that entry point for everybody. So you don't have to come to the table looking like Gwyneth Paltrow, eating a celebrity or whatever, to feel like you can opt in on some level. And I think fitness in particular can be very daunting for people who are starting from zero or even starting from before zero. And I guess by that, I mean, you have to want to participate before you can actually jump in, right? You have to want to move your body. You have to have some level of goals. And I feel like getting from 0 to 1 is probably the hardest part. And after that, you get a little bit of momentum. I'm sure you've seen it. I've experienced it in my own workout journey and fitness journey. Is once you're moving, it's so much easier to stay moving, meaning like it's easier to stick with a program once you've done it a couple of times. So what do you feel, what are those tools or those approaches that are being applied in terms of the democratization? Like, how is that coming to life in a way that someone listening who's they're having this fitness conversation that's for fitness people, and I'm like, no, I want you to feel like you don't have to be a fitness person in order to participate. So how does that come into play there?
I think it's first identifying in buckets. Now, the typical barriers to entry, whether it is being cost prohibitive, equipment prohibitive, mindset prohibitive, fitness level prohibitive, psychology around it, false beliefs, limiting beliefs. There's a lot of things that make something not accessible and makes it very hard to move from 0 to 1. And having worked one on one with so many people, I would say there's a few things just from a technical standpoint. I think it's a less than $1 commitment a month when you think about the commitment for the Centr app. And way before you even make that decision, Centr has done something brilliant. And I think it's all a part of their mission to make it accessible, where you have that 7-day free day trial, where persons can really just sign on and they can access it and they can say, hey, is this something that I want to explore at no risk, no cost to them? And the program is only 5 days, so you get some time to even reflect on it after you've done the program. So I think that's the first step, right? Where it's a low risk exploration of the program, and that's a major one. And then the other would be just my philosophy of how I have been able to weave the program together, that it is engaging, both mentally, physically. And when the results come as an objective confirmation that this is worth doing, and we've all heard the term that once you start seeing the result, then it becomes an addiction of sorts, right? So that is a little bit downstream because that requires some commitment. But I understand the tedious nature of going to a workout that you don't enjoy, that feels too exhausting, that's not too stimulating, and it makes it very hard for you to get into the rhythm. And the seamless way that our program makes it an easy and enjoyable inroad, right? It flows and it starts to eliminate a lot of the thinking. And I speak to those moments in the audio coaching as persons are going through the program, because I have that live audio for the entire time. And I have a sixth sense based on my experience and based on the experience of other people, and intuitively looking at the program to say, this is what I think you're feeling right now. And that is okay. This is day 6, and this is what you can expect. You're probably sore, you're probably tired, you're probably frustrated. This is new, this feels hard. Take a break. Tomorrow is another day. And I'm walking them through it with all my experience, just as I would in a one-on-one environment. And I think it matched very true to pattern of how people would experience it. That makes it good in terms of the stickability of it, the empathy associated with doing the program. And I think the clear direction of how it's laid out makes it no guesswork. Most of the time, it's the mental fatigue of what to do and how to do it. You don't have that mental fatigue of what to do and how to do it. It's intuitive, it's clear, it's direct, it's simple. It's no fancy gym or fitness jargon. We're speaking clear, concise terms, but we're backing it up with tried and true methodologies. So we talk about access, we talk about mindset, emotion, and we just talk about just the ease of navigating the platform that makes it easy for persons to enter and to stay committed.
What do you say as far as mindset goes, though? Because I know everybody has those days where they're not feeling it. And I think, again, speaking back to that principle of the body in motion that stays in motion, what happens when people are just in a rut, and even the rut has ruts, you know what I mean? And
Wow.
and
So
no
true.
amount, yeah, and no amount of motivational quotes and cheerleading from the sidelines is going to help somebody, or in their own mind they think no amount of that is going to help, when actually it probably will. But do you
Yeah.
have any tricks that are useful for people, whether it's like a visualization or something that's okay, if all else fails, I know I can always come back to this little mantra or this little
Hmm.
perspective shift? Because sometimes that's
Hmm.
really often what it is a shift in perspective more than anything else. I really appreciate the principle of just going from I can't to how can I? And I
Wow.
really like that. And I come back to that a lot. Okay, there is no such thing as I can't in this situation. It's more just a question of how can I? So, how do you apply
Hmm.
something like that to somebody who really needs that extra little like mindset
That's
poke?
that's incredible. That's so incredible. I love that. And you're right. Sometimes when you're in a rut, the rut has ruts, and someone comes with their Pollyannistic, the grass is greener, rainbows in the sky. You want to
Like
something at them.
positivity, I think we call it.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. You want to throw a dumbbell, you want to throw, you're like, get out of here. I get that. And we have to, but there's a twofold responsibility. And empowering persons to know that, yes, we're here to support, but really communicating, hopefully they're in a place to receive that at the end of the day, the person that has the utmost responsibility and principal responsibility to support themselves in this journey is that person who is in that rut. And you can have the best support externally, but coming to a place where you know that it starts and ends with you. The most support without the willingness to tap in will not be enough. And you can almost have no external support or validation. And if you have the will to persist, then you will make it. So knowing that it is the most empowering thing, and it really puts the responsibility in the individual. And if you're already in a rut, that may feel like a little bit too much, but it is true. And that kind of lets you know that it is in your hands. Your destiny is in your hands. Now, outside of that, I think that's the foundation, that's the core. I'm no one's savior. No app is your savior. They support you. So knowing that you are the person who will get you ultimately from point B to A. And I don't hate is a strong word, but I don't support when someone robs that sort of self autonomy from an individual. They need to have that sovereign ability to know that's your responsibility. Now that being said, the things outside of that from an external layer, we have to borrow mantras like you have done from your coach. And we also need to find our own mantras, right? And you borrow mantras from people who, you look up to, you give them the permission to speak into your life in a way that is going to be transformational. And you take it because they've earned that trust with you through their personal reputation or their relationship with you. And that could be any pretty cool. You have to allow yourself to be influenced by that. And then you have to find your mantra, which speaks to the character and the nature and the historicity of your life. And know that this is another epoch, this is another era of your life that is tied to that global mantra of your life. So for me, my global mantra really is I always figure it out. I always figure it out. And it's very simple. And it's because I've seen time and time again, if I've made the choice that I want to move from point A to point B, I always figure it out. And I may not have a clear path, but if I persist, if I'm resourceful enough, if I stick to it, I figure that out. So that gives me this kind of like, I can find a way attitude for me. And another one that I go to for me is it's worth giving up. Because most times when we feel like we want to quit, it's because quitting feels like a solution.
Mhm.
And that is a deception. We feel like somehow life gets better if we give up because temporarily we don't have to persist. I am aware that it is a fool's errand to believe that quitting is a solution. Quitting feels good in the moment, then it stabs you in the back the moment you let go. The only way out is through. And I'm aware of that.
I
So
love
those
it.
are,
I
those are
love
just
it.
some of
Yeah.
my mantras.
So
Yeah.
many. No, I'll take them all. Those are great. I love those. I want to talk a little bit more about just the physical component of it, and then I want to zoom out a little bit. But just because I know that just on behalf of my audience and behalf of my listeners, I know that we're being fed so much information right now in the wellness conversation. And even those of
Mhm.
us that are deep in it, I think, suffer from a bit of overwhelm. And sometimes I'm just enough, like I just gonna figure it out myself. But people who don't necessarily have as much access or resource to getting the good information, I think it can be very off-putting. And I know specifically women are like, okay, what is it that I'm actually, quote, supposed to be doing? Because even just yesterday, right, it's like you're hearing cold plunge is amazing and it does all this great stuff for metabolic health, and then 2 weeks later it's like, cold plunge is great, but it's not good if you have a heart condition, it's not good if you're women don't need it as much as men, and there's all this conflicting information all the time. So just in terms of like base table stakes, I think it's now commonly accepted and recognized that women need more protein than we once believed, and women need much more strength training and lifting heavy weights in order to improve bone density. Like, what are some of those basic, what do women need, and what do people of one specific age group need that others don't? Like, are there some that are just very core principles that you can break down that from your own experience and expertise are like the non-negotiables.
Absolutely. And I'm entering into a very conflicting space right here. I first think we're an ancient organism, and a lot of these quote unquote biohacking technology techniques, some of it have ancient roots, some of it is very new, but we haven't changed that much physiologically over the last 2,000, 3,000 years and beyond, right? As a species. And so there's a lot of things. So I think about let's root or the bulk of our practice, not in what has been known over the last 10 years or the last 20 years. Let's look at what has been true for most of our existence, right? And let that be the tip of the spear for the things that we prioritize if we're going to have a rank order of the things that we're going to pay attention to. And then no, we'll then have a category. We can label it as being experimental. We can label it as optimizing for peak performance and longevity. And that should be your 20 to 10%. What I see happening quite often is that we're making what should be the 10%, which are the cold plunge, saunas, and everything else in that vein, the 80% are what we should be focusing on. And we know we have it upside down and we're building on a false foundation, and that leads to confusion. So the simple way I think about it is we need sleep. And this may feel like a dummy down version. And I think sometimes because it is so simple, we take it for granted and don't appropriate the right value to it. Because no, a lot of the strategies have been monetized and they have been productized. And because of that, we're now looking to sell our breakthrough to the highest bidder for the greatest premium. And it's very hard to sell the basics because they're accessible and free. Going to bed on time, getting 8 hours of sleep. We know we feel better tomorrow. No one has to sell you that, right? And that is our ultimate foundation. Lifting something heavy, picking it up with good form, moving load, staying active, not being sedentary. That is pretty much what all these movement practices are, whether it is the high intensity class, Pilates, strength training. It's really about moving resistance, not sitting as much, and really maintaining as much of your mobility as possible by putting your body through the range of motion and the movement pattern that they were primarily designed to do. Getting to the floor, getting off the floor, getting up the stairs, climbing, running, jumping, skipping, balancing, moving load from left to right laterally through the different planes. So simplify is pick a strength training modality. Pick some cardiovascular intensity, strength train 3 to 4 times a week, cardio 2 to 3 times a week if you're looking for general fitness, and make sure it's a smart program, right? Vetted by professionals, and then make sure you're getting your 8 hours of sleep. Drink water and prioritize whole foods to start. Pick any diet plan you want to subscribe to. I'm vegan, so obviously I am very niche and eat for the last 10 years, and I'm even saying pick anyone you choose, right? Whether it be meat-based, plant-based, ensure that it's whole foods primarily, you're drinking water, and you're limiting processed foods. So that once you have that down pack, then let that reveal to you the areas that you can optimize. And that's when you do the testing, right? That's when you do the blood test. That's where you do the scans on top of that, because you've now covered the 80% and know you're looking for what are the gaps in this like broad stroke approach. And then once you've optimized the broad stroke approach, then you can go into the niche. Saying, okay, maybe my vitamin D is now low. Maybe I need to focus a little bit more, manage my inflammation because I've done all these things and I need something a little bit more, need something more practical, something more cutting edge. And that's a better way to build your system. I think about it as an architectural design. No one starts by putting the china on the constructor inside. They start by putting the foundation for the building. They erect the building. They then put on the roof. Then they then put in the windows. They paint the walls. Then they put the china. And it's just a better way to construct your health blueprint when you think about it that way. That's just like a metaphor to understand it. So that's my approach to it. And most times that 80% solves most people's problems. And they find that they don't need to do more and they don't need to listen to the noise. And if it doesn't, then there's all the information out there speaking to one of those deficiencies or gaps.
I love the way that you describe that. I think it makes perfect sense. And I think you're 100% right when you say that we're focusing on the wrong things, because I think in general, as a culture, whether you want to call it the American culture or the Western mind, whatever it is, like we like quick fixes. So somebody
Hmm.
hears, oh, I can sit in a sauna and I can get in cold water and that burns as many calories because we're still focused on this in our way. That burns as many calories as if I go running. Fuck it. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I'm not going to bother with the actual, I'm not going to take the direct way. Like you said, the only way out is through. I'm going to do all of the things I can to like circumvent doing the actual hard work, which
Hmm.
is ridiculous in my mind,
Hmm.
but I do understand that a lot of people are wired that way. We like shortcuts. We like to know that there's, and this is controversial, and I don't mean to go down this path, and I'm saying this with a lot of caveats, but there are a lot of people who say, oh, now there's a pill or an injection or whatever I can take, so I don't have to
Hmm.
do the work in watching my diet.
Hmm.
The caveat there is that there are plenty of people who need that pill and that injection. And I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who elect to do it
Hmm.
because it's an easier solution than making the necessary tweaks and watching your diet and moving and all. So yes, I think that you're 100% right in that focusing on that 80% is a great way, because I get this question a lot. I do one episode or one newsletter post on like one specific thing, and I'm hearing from women like, oh my god, I thought I was doing all these things right, and now you're telling me I have to be using like this toothpaste. And I'm like, no, I'm not telling you have to use that toothpaste. I'm telling you that once you, and you say it much more eloquently than I did, but once you solve for the big stuff, then you start making those little tweaks. But yeah, it's not about putting the china on the shelves before
Absolutely.
you've built the foundation of the house. So
Just
that's
there you go.
awesome. I love it. You said two things that I want to come back to. Can we talk about skipping for a second?
Let's talk about it.
My husband, who's very well versed and he absorbs all of the information and it synthesizes in his brain like the Matrix. It's crazy.
Amazing.
But so he's super fit and he's always trying something new and different to push the limit. And now he's on this thing about skipping. And I think it's adorable and hilarious, but like
Mhm.
there is actual benefit, right?
It's important. There's a bone density, just the impact from jumping. There's cardiovascular support that it provides, the proprioception associated with moving your arms, your legs. And if it's fun, that's a plus, should not be underrated. It's a skill that you're developing. So there's all those benefits. I love to look at it as a path to an outcome. And if for all those benefits that I mentioned, there are multiple paths that yield that benefit. Jumping, sprinting, quick references for that same output. So when I think about modalities like that you have other pathways that yield similar benefit, it comes down to preference, which is not very scientific. What do you like that you can be consistent with enough for the time required at the intensity level needed to get the result you want?
Yeah.
And that's the equation. So if that's skipping for you, great, it works, right? If that is sprinting for you, great, it works. If that is doing pogo jumps, if that's doing deficit jumps, if that's doing broad jumps, absorbing impact, same sort of bone density sort of response, and cardiovascular and plyometric and developing fast with muscles, then great, do that. If you're someone who requires a little bit more diversity and you want it to be an arrow in your quiver or something in your toolbox and you're going to use it in combination, a hybrid approach, do that too, right? For all of those paths is, can you do it long enough at the intensity needed for the outcome you want? And I don't want someone to hear that and to think that they need to have a resounding yes to that question to begin. Because if you feel like you have to have a yes to that resounding commitment, then it feels like it's such a big commitment. I don't know if I can do it. And then you feel like, why bother? Why even bother? You become more committed when you start. So it's also knowing that the person who is committed on day 100 isn't the same person from an identity standpoint, right? As a person who moved from 0 to 1. So you don't have to be that person. You just need to be the person who can begin, right? And then repeat that tomorrow. And over time, that compounds.
I love it. You just need to be the person who can begin. And I think to your point, identity wise, you're not the same person as the person you are when you begin as you are on day 100. But I think also chemically. Like you're literally not the same person because you've unlocked new hormones and new growth,
Absolutely.
factors and all of that. And your physiology is literally different. So you're physically not the
Absolutely.
same person. And that's an important thing to keep in mind because I think it gets you from that 0 to 1 of, oh, if I actually can change my actions and then the motivation follows the action, then
Mm.
that triggers the release of new things in my body that will change me, even if I'm not aware of the change. So I love that. The other thing you mentioned that I want to ask you about is that you're vegan. So I think that this is another very hot button topic, and everybody's got an opinion, and we're going to piss off at least 50% of the listeners. But I'm always interested in, I'm not vegan myself. I started adding more animal protein in the last 2 years or so, and it's been very good for me. I was not eating meat completely for ethical reasons. Like I have some stuff with chicken, that's like a whole other story. But in general, it was more just my perception of what my body wanted and needed and health wise. But I would love to hear more from you as somebody who is incredibly fit and has incredible muscle development, because I think there's a lot of misconception around what you can build in your body when you don't eat animal protein. So can you talk a little bit about you don't have to talk about your decision behind it unless you'd like to share, but more in like
Mhm.
how you maintain and where your protein's coming from and how are you possibly getting enough because you must be fainting, I'm sure.
For every label or quote that you hear, I'm sure there's someone who proved those statements right, who went vegan, and that's been their experience. It does require probably a little bit more care based on how educated we are about nutrition as a population to navigate it and get the sort of micro and macronutrients that you need. My decision to be vegan, even though I do have some ethical sort of ties, I wouldn't say that was the main reason for me doing it. 10 years ago, I was very busy and I was working two jobs and I was sleeping 3 hours a night and I was working very long hours and I was doing this for a very long time. At that time, I wasn't vegan. I would typically prepare my meals, meal prep, your chicken, your rice, your broccoli, still trying to stay healthy. If you get the picture for that. And I got so busy, I had to make a decision between an extra hour of sleep and meal prepping. And at 3 hours of sleep, then you choose the extra hours of sleep. Uh, so I still wanted to be conscious about what I was consuming. So I was no longer meal prepping. And whenever I would go to the supermarket, I would pass a stall or something. I would try to grab the most healthiest, convenient thing. And that so happened to be fruits, nuts, the things that are easy to eat on the go. And I did that for about 8 months. And I started feeling pretty good because at that time I was in a rough place. I was recovering better. My body composition had improved, my digestion had improved tremendously. My inflammation and water retention had gone down. I was a fitness professional at the time, so I could notice these things and be
Mm.
sensitive about it. And I was like, what am I doing differently? I didn't expect this to end well at the rate that I was going, but it seems like it's making a turn. So I did like an autopsy on the last 8 months. I was like, the only thing I'm not doing, I'm not meal prepping, which means that I'm not eating the same way. I looked at what I was eating. It was all plant-based just randomly by convenience and by
Mm.
what I could actually convenience. So I knew that was a plant-based vegan diet. So I said to myself at that point, like an experiment, I said, I'll continue to do this. I'll optimize it a little bit more. Maybe I'll be more intentional with grabbing a salad with a little bit more plant-based protein, etc. I started to, and I said, let me see how well this goes because it's been great so far. And I made a pack at that point. I said, I'll continue to do this until it doesn't work. It was as simple as that. No grand statement,
Right.
no trying to change the world. I'm like, let's just do this until it doesn't work. It kept on working. I was feeling good. I was putting on muscle. I was recovering better. My digestion had improved. And I stuck with it because it was working. But, and this is like in terms of settling down on a philosophy. In a plethora of options, is the persons who decide to commit to one for a wise period of time. And a wise period of time is it still working? Is it serving your goals? Is it accessible? Is it good for you, the planet? Is it good for your ecosystem? Like you can come up with the parameters and the criteria that makes it wise for you. But I said, I'll pursue this And I kept on doing it because I think having some rule-based approach, not so legalistic where you feel like you're suffocated by your own rules, but enough of a guardrail that it makes it easy for you to commit to something that works. So the persons who are always trying everything every week, and because something is good, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should abandon what's already good for you to try something else. There are many paths, and you have to somewhat know that in choosing one, there is a sacrifice of other good paths. But once it yields a net outcome that you're satisfied with, you should also say it's par for the course. Like it's just part of being committed. If I'm LeBron James, that means I'm not Usain Bolt. And it's just hopefully they're both good paths. It's just that's how it works. And that's how it works with training. That's how it works with fitness. If I'm married to my wife, I'm not married to someone else. Like this is just what it is. So I think fitness needs to have that sort of loyalistic approach in some way, rules that guide your philosophy. So that's why I stick. It was working, and I needed something to simplify my decision and help me cut through the noise. And just having that sort of like affiliation did that for me. And so for the protein, I prioritize plant-based protein. I do my blood test. My blood test came back great. My levels are looking good across the board. There's no sign that I would be better off physiologically if I had meat in my diet. And I'm talking, yeah, I got my blood drawn as recently as this morning. So these results are coming back. I do like quarterly blood tests. So
Mhm.
there's nothing indicating that I should do anything different, not from my muscle mass, not from my recovery, not from my T levels or any one of my biomarkers. And it's over a sufficient amount of time where 10 years is enough time for you to see something popping up. So that is good reassurance for me. And if it wasn't, then I wouldn't be vegan tomorrow. And some persons may think that's odd, but that's just what it is. I'm doing it because I want to feel good and I want to be here for my family and I want to be here for my wife and my son. And I want to feel good and live as long as I can. And that's more important than a preference of where I get my protein from, for me.
Right.
So I know some persons are more ethical. So there's no shot on their ethical belief and just being transparent with where I stand and how I go about it practically. Where do I get my protein? I use Perfect Amino. It's an amino acid brand. They have all essential amino acids, branching amino acids.
Mhm.
Find it's very great for making the building blocks of protein available to help me with recovery and my performance. Perfect amino acid is something I've been taking also for a decade, and I've definitely verified the benefits there. And then I tend to prioritize plant-based sources, beans, nuts, legumes, tofu, the things that have protein. And I do use the best-in-class protein powders that I can find that are plant-based. And the combination of all of that makes up my 80%. And I hit my grams for the day. It's been working well. I could have complicated that a lot more, but that would be really just for show. We don't need to. Uh,
Do you have a favorite vegan restaurant in New York?
no, I don't.
Yeah, New York doesn't do
Um,
vegan food very well, I have to say.
no, I
I
don't.
mean,
But I also
that's a
think it's
controversial
me.
opinion too. Yeah.
I also think it's me. I'm big on simple ingredient foods that the restaurants make it a little bit too fancy
Mhm.
for me. They do a bit too much for the food to make it great. I like my single ingredients old as natural as possible. And if I need to put a restaurant in there for a celebration or something, then we'll do that. But it's definitely not making up the 80% of how I consume.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm the same. I cook more and I do more prep than seeking out healthy restaurants. For me, if I'm going to go to a restaurant, it's not about seeking health so much as eventizing something or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
eventizing. Yeah, the
Yeah,
connection for sure.
yeah. We're about to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you two things, I guess. First, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to make sure people know and understand? And then also, I want to ask you about whether you think that there are any wellness slash fitness trends out there that you would like to see go by the wayside, finish out
Yo.
their of their stint as like the thing of the moment.
Well, I'll
You can
first
answer
start off.
either or both.
I'll start with my shameless plug.
Yes, of course.
Um, so I think for anyone here, you can find me at Korey.Rowe. on Instagram. That's my primary platform. The KR Method is a host of training programs. We do on-demand programs. We do one-on-one coaching for online coaching. We have a whole nutrition team. We have a whole training team for those persons looking for simple ways that get it done. If you're looking for the last place to stop for your fitness need, along with my program on strength on the Centr app, Strength in Motion, check that out as well for your 7-day free trial. And then on top of that, I would say for things that I wish we would go away with, I would say I wouldn't even waste time thinking about banishing something. I would say, because that is also focusing on the wrong thing. That's like
Mm.
giving energy to something that we probably shouldn't even be talking about if it shouldn't even be around. So no lip service for those. I would say focus on the big rocks. Get your 8 hours of sleep, preferably get into bed as soon as you can, and focus on hydration. Make water your primary source of consumption from a liquid standpoint. Eat whole foods, pick whatever one you want, right? And then lift something heavy, put it down, work your upper body, work your lower body, work your core, do some cardio, and rinse and repeat. And do that for the next 6 months to 12 months. Get your blood tests done, see what your levels are, and then optimize from
It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward when you put it that way. So hopefully
that.
it's something that people can get their arms around. I
Yes,
certainly believe that they can. We will put
definitely.
all of that information that you just shared and the links and all of that in the show notes so people can find it there. And thank you so much for joining me. This was such a pleasure to meet you. And again, meet on so many different things. We're very like-minded in that way. So I appreciate having that conversation.
Amazing. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Korey. Have a good one.